idea of why we decided to talk about the Caribbean educational system is because with our last discussion, we felt as though that is where the conversation was leaning. Everybody was asking about the common entrance or the secondary entrance exam in Trinidad and stuff like that. So that is our conversation for tonight. My name is Chelsea Best. I am a level 3 electrical and computer engineering student at the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a Barbadian, and I will allow the rest of the panel to briefly introduce themselves.
Good night, everyone. I'm Renelle Francis. I'm 17 years old and I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I attend the Faith Tabernacle Church here in Trinidad, and currently I am studying information technology and principle of accounts.
Hi, good night, everyone. My name is Dominic Scanterbury. I am 18 years of age. I am a Barbadian and I attend Harrison College here in Barbados. I'm a national athlete in badminton and volleyball.
Hi, good night, everyone. My name is Kayla Rennick. I am 17 years old and I go to Harrison College, and I'm from Barbados, and I represent Barbados in swimming and triathlon.
Okay, great. So my first question is, do y'all think that the educational system, the current one we have, wherever you reside, should be abolished? And I'm referring specifically to exams such as the Common Entrance. Secondly, in Trinidad, they call it the SEA or CXC, CAPE, anything like that. What is your opinion on abolishing the system?
I personally don't believe that the common entrance for one should be abolished. I believe it could be tweaked a little, but the exams further up, referring to the CXC and CAPE, yeah, I believe that those could be abolished.
Thanks for being honest.
I don't think that exams should be abolished. There are assessments, to see how we've done throughout the school year. And even if you do abolish exams like Common Entrance and CSAC and CAPE, you can't necessarily abolish the exams like LSATs and SATs and stuff like that when it comes to the higher levels.
Yeah.
I personally don't think the education system should be abolished. It's a structured system, and it's set up in a way to see, as Kayla said, how we are improving in our academics, and that's where SEA and TXA and those things come into place. Probably certain things within the education system needs a little tweaking, but not abolished.
Okay, and I completely agree. I think the abolishing the educational system is highly ridiculous. I believe the system is flawed, and I believe a lot of pressure is placed on students when it comes to common entrance, the SCA, CXC, CAPE. And though, like Dominic said, he would abolish it, that's because that's what he's going through right now, CAPE. For me, that has, been through the process a little further, I don't understand why there was so much pressure. Not that I agree with the pressure, but the system is very flawed, and more so because of the pressure that is put onto us, and not necessarily that it should be abolished. So that leads me into the influence that the educational system has put onto your life throughout your time.
Well, for me personally, the educational system that we have here in Barbados, it has affected me, and because there's a hierarchy that they have set. So there's lower schools and there are higher schools, when I believe it should not be that way. And the fact that I can say that there are lower schools and higher schools means that it has affected me, that I can see this. And it's also based on the students that come out of these schools and the teachers that are there that are the reasons that some of these students are coming out. So it has affected me, and the influences there. Oh, so I saying it shot right. So that's what I have to say.
Yes, I agree, Dominic. I think because of the schools being ranked in a specific order, I think there's a lot more attention given to the top schools when it comes if you're comparing like specifically book subjects as opposed to like athletics and stuff like that. A lot more teachers are like invested and other people put more into the top schools as opposed to those which are quote unquote ranked lower than the others.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that the whole education system is like a competition now. Like the whole screening system is a competition. There's a stigma attached to what we call the prestige schools and the not so prestige schools. And, it all comes with the pressure that the whole education system has caused. So I think that has affected me when it comes to the pressure.
Okay. I would say that the educational system has impacted me severely. I mean, I was the first child, so I went from public to private when my mom realized. Actually, it was so flawed that I had a teacher that told me I wouldn't really amount to anything because I would get grade threes and that would be fine. So based on that attitude, my mom moved me, and that is the educational system in a lot of public schools. So I was moved to a private, and from there I flourished. And once I finished primary school, I went to another private. Then my mom realized, okay, she's good, she can handle herself. And I went to public. And that's not how it should be. We shouldn't move from school to school because of the environment, because of the energy put onto by teachers, basically, that put themselves in this position. So we have a question. So I have been heavily influenced by our current system, both in negative and a positive way. So our first question here is, how specifically would you tweak the educational system? What changes would you like to see? Can teachers really predict, this is their vote. Well, that's it as a second question. Can teachers really predict students' academic outcomes?
I'll answer the second question. I think teachers, they teach you for the whole school year. Some depending on school, sometimes there'll be more than one school year. So they kind of understand your learning abilities and stuff like that. I think it may not be 100% accurate, but I think teachers can predict or kind of estimate what they personally think a student would do if they see how much effort they're putting throughout the school year and stuff. Because even if, but at the same time, a teacher can see that a student is, getting 50s throughout the school year, and then a student might, try to study really hard and end up getting higher grades, but that usually isn't always the case.
And the first question again, Chelsea.
First question asks, specifically, how would you tweak the educational system? What changes would you like to see?
One thing that I would change, because earlier when I said abolish the CAPE and CSE, not the combinations for sure, because as Renell and Kayla said, testing is something that we will need in life and it's a basis that we all need. But one thing that I would say we'll do with these tests, instead of competing with each one, all of your peers, instead I believe the test should be there for the teachers to then take those marks and then facilitate a better environment for the student. So take those marks and instead of putting it, did he do better than this? Did he do better than her? Taking it and then structuring a better path for the students based on their marks.
I'm answering the first question. I think one of the things that could be tweaked in the education system is more so the availabilities they have in each school. Like more so the private schools have more options than the public schools. So I think it shouldn't just be the private school that have a lot of options. The public schools should have options so that the children can be exposed to more things and it can help them make a better decision when it comes to their future and their career path and so on.
Okay, great. I agree. Um, I think it goes a lot deeper than well, in my opinion, how it needs to be tweaked, it needs to be balanced. There needs to be academics, but also some kind of provisions for skilled students that of course might not do as well, and that might be good with their hands. So there needs to be a balance. Like Renelle said, at private school, you get that. You're introduced to music and drama and arts. And at public, because of funding, students really, might be introduced to them for like 2 years. And then because, the government basically can't inject all of that money, then, they branch off and they don't get to really get the real experience that they should. So I think there needs to be a balance between private and public, but noting that we understand why the system is the way it is. And the next question was, can teachers predict students' academic outcomes? I would say no. I know there are some teachers that can really see in the future and be like, this child is going to excel. But based on my experience by my teacher, because I was in class too, and she was telling me, my mom, sorry, that I wasn't doing well clearly. And she told my mom I would get grade 3s. And I hadn't even done CX, common entrance yet. But she was still trying to look into my future and basically putting that on me. So in my instance, predictions from teachers are completely ill, but it also depends the age of the student. I mean, primary school, you don't really know how you can excel. The next question, and I guess I can answer first, was, are you born smart or is smart something you can become? For me, I would say it was not born smart, or I don't know if it's opportunity. I'm not sure what it is, but based on how I performed when I was in primary school, which I could understand, why would you think I would be an engineering student today? People think engineering students are so smart. So I would label myself as smart. But based on how I was when I was younger, more so in primary school, would you label me as smart? No. So would you all say that you are born smart, or is it just developing whatever ends in your brain to get you stimulated and going?
I definitely don't think you would be born smart. I think it all comes down to the parents and from young instilling certain values and these type of things. I remember when I was smaller, my father used to put me in front of the TV and make me watch these educational cartoons and those type of things. So from young, my brain started developing when it comes to the alphabet and those things, and those things helped me to perform a certain way when I reached in preschool, primary school, and now, well, secondary school. So I guess it's all a process and not just being born smart.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't say that you're born smart, but then the people may look at that differently and being smart in a specific topic, a specific area. Because that's what most people do. They go and professionalize in whatever it is they do. So to say someone is smart, you could be smart in one area but not the next. So it's a really touchy topic there, but I would say, you have to learn and build from there.
Kayla? I think Kayla is stuck, or is it just me?
Yeah, she's frozen. I think we should go on.
Okay. So, but also something about smart. What makes someone smart is the question. Like, do I have to be, does getting 90 make me smart? Because that's just grading us based on academics, but there could be something that you could be smart with your hands.
Exactly.
That's not the word, creative or something like that. But
Right, is the same topic.
I listen.
Right, it's the same topic that we hear all the time. If you judge a fish and tell it to climb a tree, that it will spend his whole life thinking that is foolish. So it's just where you are grading yourself on and what you put your mind to.
I agree. I guess this could go into my next question. And I would see if Kayla's not bad. Do you feel as though the educational system creates a culture of modern day slavery based on labeling and exams? So this kind of goes with smart, the word smart. So what do you guys think?
I would say yes. The reason I say this is because they set up the system in a way that some people will have to feel, because it is set up in one specific way and we are graded based on what we remember for that day of the test, and that's it. And if we were to grade everyone a specific way so that we can all flourish in our own specific talents, then all of us will eventually excel in our professions and then need to do something in that sphere, in that area. And in our country, we might not have everything to facilitate that. So then we will have to go overseas to somewhere where it can facilitate it. But by grading some people down and not allowing them to further in their passions, they will stay down at the bottom and believe that they can't do anything. And then they will end up having to go and find a low paying job where you are making minimum wage. And that's basically slavery that they are creating.
Okay, so this kind of ties back to what I was saying before when I said that the education system needs to make more opportunities a little more available for students in like public schools, because there's kind of not a level playing ground when it comes to the education system and the private school and the public schools. And that's when teachers need to kind of sift through their children and see which ones needs could go into the athletic field or those type of things rather than academics, and help them to branch off into what they want to be when they grow up, because some children will not succeed in the way that other children would succeed in exams. So,
Right. I agree. I think it could be, referred to as a slavery in a sense. Some will do well and some will not, and you just have to put up with it. And to touch what Dominic said about failing, everybody can get through. I think in university, students, I should say, feel that way. Students feel as though, you have to be really, really smart to get through, to like fail nothing. And the system is one way. And a lot of students, are not academically inclined. Some people just, get through the system somehow, and they feel as though, I can say, based on things we go through today, that the system is not for us. It feels as though it's against us, especially when we compare to like when you go elsewhere, like Canada or the US, and you feel as though these students just excel, they just do so well because of their system, clearly. And for us, it feels like we ask a lecturer something and we can't get any information. It's like they don't want us to get through. And I can't say that's for all of them, because I've had experiences with people that say, you can do it. My lecture the other day was like, Charles, I realize you do really well with projects, but with exams, you just don't excel. You don't show your full capacity. And I was like, yeah, I just don't feel like exams are for me because it's just too much pressure. And he noticed that from looking at my history. But others, they just wouldn't, because they don't care. And the system has it in a sense where, can they really help you specifically? So it's like, it has to be a system for us. And it's not really. Kayla is back. I just want to make sure she's back so I can ask her the question.
Hi, yes, I'm back.
Yeah, okay. So did she get a chance? Oh no, I'm gonna give you the last two questions because people more than likely will want to hear your opinion. But one of the questions was, are you born smart, or is it something you become?
I personally think you can be born, I won't necessarily say smart, I think you can be born gifted, and it's just your job and your parents' job and those around you to help, build that gift and allow you to master it and things like that. Because if you say you're good at math, for example, if you don't practice math and if you don't, then you can't develop in that area. So I think it's like a mixture of both.
Right, okay. And the next question was, do you feel as though the education system creates a culture of modern day slavery based on the labeling and exams?
Um, I kind of, but in the same way, no. Because I personally like understand the reasoning for the exams and stuff like that. But when you put it like, as you said, modern day slavery, then in a sense, yes.
Right, understood. So someone in the chat says, one of the areas I believe is flawed is the covering of the syllabus. This the same the same teacher offers extra lessons at a fee to cover what the syllabus is supposed to offer. I think that goes under pressure, you know. Is it too much? Is the system heavily loaded? That why is it that teachers can't get through their syllabus? What do y'all think?
I think that for one, it's too much for the way that the classes are structured. Because here, most of the time, it's one teacher to, and this is for secondary schools, say 30 students. And for the teacher to um, get through to these children on a personal level is very difficult. So, as you said, Chelsea, if you have a teacher and they are not willing to go the extra mile to help you, and you are lagging behind, you just fall further and further behind. But as you said, there was the one teacher that he could have predicted, no, well, not like predicted, but that he saw what the trend was with you. I believe if the classes are a little smaller and the teachers can have a more intimate relationship with the children and study with them a little longer, and this goes back to the previous question that yes, they'll be able to predict where you are, but this is once you have a solid relationship with the teacher and they have been teaching you for a while.
Understood. Renata?
I think one of the reasons why the teachers may not be able to finish the syllabus before exams or so on, and this is something I experienced personally when I was going to secondary school, is that sometimes the students would be loud and obnoxious and not really settled in class, paying attention, talking, and sometimes the teacher have to stop the entire class just to calm down the students, and it really was a setback when it came to moving on and learning new things, new topics before exams.
Yes, I agree with both Raynell and Dominic. The classes being so big, not everybody has the same learning speed, sorry. So, and then not everybody's gonna want to say, well, I don't understand this topic, and then and children, our attention span is not the best. And if you're teaching something that isn't interactive or isn't interesting, a student is going to get distracted or find other things to do. And then they might distract other students who may then distract more students. And then the whole class may be restless. So, yeah. And then also teachers still do have a lot on their plate, because like how we do 10, maybe 11, well, at this stage now it's like 8 subjects. Teachers also have lots of other classes to do too. So it's just a mixture of a lot of things that cause the syllabus not being finished.
Yeah. I think this is a problem we experience at my level, at university level, to even the other day I had a lecture was like, I'm not gonna, this is on the syllabus, but I'm not gonna go through it because you should know it, or just go and read this because we don't have the time for it. The syllabus says this, so I have to meet this criteria, but you're telling me you don't have time. So shows how flawed the system is, you know.
Another thing that shows how flawed it is as well, we say that there is a syllabus there and we will study it, and then the exams come, and then there's only 2 out of 5 things on the syllabus that actually came when we studied this whole lot of stuff. Maybe only really need to study these 2 things.
Yeah. I think that's just the system we have, like 11 plus or common entrance. They test you on math and English, and I don't know if I think that's it right now. but you're taught things throughout your whole school life. And then for CXC, they do the same thing. But at university, we would have midterms. So you're tested on half of the syllabus, and then the final exam, you're tested on the next half, depending on the lecture, depending on the course. So it's different as you progress, but do we have the facilities to, first of all, have smaller classes, or also to have midterms, because can you divide, y'all think you could really divide the common entrance to make it better in that you focus on maths or half of something and then you focus on the one a few months later? No.
I don't really see how that's gonna think that. Are you gonna do an exam on adding and subtracting and then one on multiplying and dividing?
Exactly. So,
I understand. For me, it's like, because I don't know. I understand the concept of all the exams. Yes, there's certain, like, as you get older, it's more in depth and more intense and more exams you have to do. So maybe breaking it down when the levels get harder kind of makes sense. But then at the same time, your brain is growing and stuff like that, and you're expected to kind of retain all of that knowledge.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
It actually seems weird because, as you're younger, your brain cannot hold as much. So you would think that you would get little mini assignments and breakdown, but it is backwards basically. So if no one, okay, you have a question. And if anybody wants to mute, just you can raise your hand. Okay, so the statement says, if a teacher is having challenges during school time, what makes it so different at paid lessons? Lessons seem to be just as big as a day of day-to-day class. Oh, so lessons is, okay. Lessons for us is usually after school. So unless it's a Saturday you're referring to, but
I think it means the size of the classes, like how we said, if the
okay,
smaller, if teachers have time with them.
Okay, you can go first.
Because teachers, this is for me personally, this is my personal opinion, because teachers have a specific syllabus to follow and to finish by a certain time. If a teacher, most teachers tend to rush through a topic. And if they ask, do y'all understand, in a class of 30 and they get 3 or 4 responses from the faster learning students that say yes, they tend to just go on to the next topic. At least for me personally, when it comes to like lessons more so it's just, like repetition of the subject and practice and that. So it's a lot. Lessons isn't necessarily like really being retaught the subject.
I think also to go off of what Kayla said, with the lessons, even if the classes might be the same size as in school, the difference is from what I've experienced. You could take certain parts of the syllabus that you learned in school that you might have been having trouble with, and you could take it to that teacher at lessons, and they would cater to you specifically for that part. But in the classes during school time, the teacher has to go with the syllabus that caters to everyone at that specific time. So you might be falling behind, but the majority is the one that they have to deal with. Even if they might come to you a little later after school or something, where the lessons will come if the teacher isn't willing to, that is how the lessons will be different from the schools in class, even if the classes are the same size.
Also, different teachers have different learning, will teach differently. So if my math teacher at school teaches in a way that I don't understand, but then my math lessons teacher teaches in a way that I understand, even though there are 30 other students in my lessons class, he's teaching in a way that'll get to me. So it makes sense.
For me personally, the experience I had with lessons, it was a much smaller class than my actual school class, and basically the teacher just did the same topics, but in her personal way, how she thinks it works better for her. And I guess that helped, because in school they have a syllabus, as Dominic said, to follow. Sometimes we may not understand it because of how the teacher brought it across in class. And I think Kayla had mentioned before that you can go to the teacher with a specific topic that you didn't understand, and she will show you how she or he will show you their way of doing it, and hopefully that helps.
I agree. Actually, when I think about when I did lessons for CXC Math and English, the class was smaller, but the teacher was just going over stuff I was taught before. And for some reason, the lesson system is not flawed because you send each kids lessons, and for some reason they excel. So like everyone said, is maybe it's a teaching that they do depending on who you go to studies, but also some students just need the extra explanation and different techniques, like Kayla said. So the next question is, does the syllabus give a percentage topic coverage? So for us, I've never seen a percentage topic coverage, but y'all can answer yes or no. And Dominic, there's a question in the chat for you. So just take a look at it and then you can respond after. Percentage for y'all at Cape and
What do they mean by percentage topic coverage? Like only a certain amount of the topic has to be covered?
Yeah. Do y'all even see the syllabus? Y'all see like course outlines and
The CXC syllabus says the syllabus they post, well not post, that they have online. That's really our only way to think. Our teachers don't send it to us or anything like that.
so right. But I think we automatically assume that it's 100% coverage. Once it's there, it has to be done. That's the approach I've always been given. Is it different in Trinidad right now?
Well, we, as Kayla said, we don't get to see our syllabus in school, like it's available online. But as you said, we would figure that is 100% coverage that we are getting. But for some of the exams I did, clearly it was not 100% because we got topics on the exam that we didn't cover in class. So, yeah.
Dominic.
Right. I'm going to answer the question that was posted. The question is, I'm going to read it. Just had it here. All right. Doesn't it make sense? Doesn't it make sense you a more rounded student to learn as much as you can though, as opposed to just studying what might come in the exam paper? Yes, I believe it does make more sense to study as much as you can so that you are more well versed on the topic that you are studying. That will come when you pick your profession later in your school life. When you look at first and second farmers who get this broad topic and there's like 12 different subjects that they have to study, and they get the whole topic, the whole syllabus for all of them, and they're not going to be tested on all of them. Why would you go through all of this extra things to take up more space in your brain? As Chelsea said, when you're at the younger stages, it's harder to keep on to hold to certain things. So I believe when you professionalize and you smallen the amount of studies you're doing, then yes, it makes more sense to get as much knowledge on that topic, especially if you're going in that field to work. But for the smaller subjects, especially the ones that you will eventually drop, I don't see the need to study the whole syllabus.
As somebody has been through the system, I understand it. I understand why we had to be assessed the way we had to be assessed, because if you slack off during primary school and secondary school, when you get to university, where you basically trying to go on a certain career path, you are not going to be as, like Miss Agar said, as well-rounded as you could be if you focus on it as a holistic thing. So the next question actually leads into my next question, and it asks, how exactly would you tweak the system to better cater for skilled students? So I just gonna give you my question to correlate with that. It says, Scandinavian countries have academic, skill-based, and technocrats. They recognize that everyone, yeah, right. They basically recognize everyone is needed. There's no snobbing. Is there discrimination with the school within the school system? But also, since we know other people have a balance of skills and academics, how do y'all think that this impacts us, and what would you better do to facilitate the skilled student? Starting with Dominic.
If you're going to go on to the Scandinavian countries, I'm going to talk with Finland as one for sure, because they, from the research that we have done, they have shown to be one of the top schooling systems. And one thing that they do, as we alluded to earlier, they have smaller classes, with one teacher that will stick with the student for upwards of 5, 6 years. And by this, those skilled or gifted students, the teacher can better facilitate their growing. And another thing that they have is that they don't have set criteria for the all of the students to go by. They don't have across the board tests. They still do have testing. As you said, it would be foolish to abolish all testing, because in life you need that testing. But what they do with this testing is that they take it and they find out how they could further the children in their specific field. So I believe that once you have the smaller classes and the teachers are sticking more with the students, the gifted and the skilled students can progress a lot faster and on their own time compared to people that might be a little slower in their learning.
I think that there needs to be, the school probably needs to have way more extracurricular activities. Like, I'm judging from my experience when I used to go secondary school, we didn't have any extracurricular activities available to us in school. Basically, it was just physical education class that was there. So what if I wanted to be a footballer? I would have gone through the whole education system doing all these different subjects. And then after that, I would have gone to start learning how to play football. So I guess they just need to, even if we have to pay for it, I guess. And when it comes to food and nutrition, I guess they should have more lab available for those things.
I agree. That kind of touched into my next question, but Kayla can give her say.
I think there just needs to be maybe more schools that cater to specific things. Like in Barbados, Harrison College is known for a more science-based school. The St. Michael School is business and like PE and stuff. So if you have schools that are catering specifically to certain skills and certain things that help these students develop these things during the day, or not only after they finish other things which they may not necessarily want to do and are just told they have to do, because it would definitely help.
Yeah, I agree. I think in our current system, like Kayla said, Harrison College is a science school. But what's to say that science students that go to Harrison College don't want to do culinary arts? What's to say just because somebody is smart doesn't mean that they wouldn't like to engage in a skill. Smart as in academic smart. So I feel like our system needs a balance. So when you do common entrance, yes, you have your academics and you say these kids go here. But if you realize or you feel as though these students that do lower, carry them somewhere that has a skilled school as opposed to just forcing them to do all of these CXCs that they don't want to do. But I think that the CXCs are necessary, especially math and English and depending on your career path. But also when we look at, for instance, the athletes, we see them on TV, they run really well. But when the reporter or the journalist comes to speak to them, they can't articulate themselves. And it's sad because they too, are skilled students. So maybe their coach, no, I don't even think it's a coach, is the teacher needs to realize, okay, this student is going to represent us, make sure that they can articulate themselves, so, and Unfortunately, Kayla and Dominic are athletes and they can articulate themselves, but not everyone can. So there's a reason for our system, like we keep on saying. Oh, I feel like all the questions touching into my questions, so I can just more so focus on the chat. But the next question says, do you think teachers should focus on teaching life relevant topics on a wide range of subjects rather than focus on preparing for exams? Students can be taught methodologies of passing an exam in a few weeks of, oh shoot, I lost it. I think instead of intense focus, wait, this one is gone. Intense focus, students should enjoy learning for learning's sake. I agree. I completely agree that, like, well, for me, lecturers need to learn how to relate what we do on the book theory to real life, because how do you expect to grasp the understanding of students if you cannot relate what you're doing to life and make it quote unquote fun, so they can actually visualize it. Though people can, regurgitate, not everybody can. Some people need to be able to visualize, and so they need to bring real world experiences and real world life into the classroom. What do you have to say?
Well, I completely, totally agree with this. And the reason I say this is because when we look at it and we are coming up, we always get told to pick a job that we love, pick a job that we enjoy doing. And if we decide at an early age, we decide we like this job, and then we go into being taught it, and it just deter from us because we are just learning certain things that we would never use, and it's not really relating to how it would when we get to the job. So I believe that the real world stuff should be taught instead of the stuff for the test, because the test would come, we would put back everything we remembered because we crammed or we studied for it, and then the next day, the next week along the line, we forget everything because it was just for that test. And then in the working world, we don't use most of it. So I believe that, as she said, or he, I'm not sure who it was, my apologies, that real world situations should be taught in the classroom.
I agree. It shouldn't be just preparing us for exams and just to pass a certain level. We should have a clear understanding of how these things can be used in everyday life, as Dominic said, and not just for, okay, we're learning this just to pass the exam, but more so how we're going to apply it to our lives when we go into the working world, as Dominic said. I think that aspect of it is very important as well.
I agree also, and I think even if at the end of the day we still have to do exams right now. So even if you don't only teach things that apply, you can use things that we do in everyday lives to relate, to help students engage and be more interested in learning the same things we have to learn for the exams. So like for me, for example, physics, one of the topics we had to do, my teacher, he used Tom and Jerry, the TV show, as an example, and used that to teach us this one specific topic in physics. And then for summary writing in primary school, we used a hamburger to teach students how to write the summary. So it's just little things like those, our students is going to more so remember a TV show than they're going to remember that, I don't know, the formulas and those type of boring things that you learn in math and physics and stuff like that.
Right, I agree. But something Dominic said, I kind of brings me back to something. People often think and say, when we learn all of this in school, when are we ever going to use it? And I realized only last year I did an internship, and I realized it's not a case of us doing the maths, I should say the maths and the geography maybe in school, is about how it, what's the word? How learning these things forms your mind. Like so me, I do engineering, and I can tell you the critical thinker I am now, I wasn't when I started, because the challenges and the things I just had to overcome just made me just turn my mind where I don't think the same way. And when I went into the internship, I was like, oh my gosh, suppose I don't know anything because I've never had like a job in this field. And when I went in, one of the guys was like, what are they teaching y'all over there? Because for some reason, I could grasp things in ways I didn't realize because my brain had just been taught to function like that. So you might not see the math. Well, for some people, not see the math, they will see the English. They will see the English, but you might not see the topics. But for some reason, the system is this way to develop your mind so you become a well-rounded student or sorry, citizen in the long run.
Right.
So
Quickly, just want yeah, sorry. Based on
mhm,
what you said, I understand fully. But the thing about it is that basically what I was trying to get at is that sometimes the system is set up in a way where we are fed information and all we are supposed to do is put back that information on a page. We
mhm,
aren't supposed to try and find any way to use it in any specific situation. Right? We are just told do this and put it back on the paper. But then, as you said, when you get in their internship, there's a lot of things that you have to think about differently. So
mhm.
if that's another thing that we could change about the syllabus, I know some teachers like to implement it by giving projects and stuff like that. But I believe it could be pushed more in having the children to thinking freely instead of just saying do this, and that this will be outcome you get. This will be outcome you get. And let them think more so that when they get into the world, no matter what job it is you have, yes, there'll be some set things that have to go this way and has to be done like this. But then some things might not go to plan, and then you have to think on the spot. So that's on the spot thinking that we should be taught no, so that we don't just become soldiers and factory workers, just keep putting back out whatever we taking. Is Chelsea frozen? Okay, then I guess we could look in the chat and see what the next question here is until she sticks. I see a question here saying, what about students whose parents cannot afford the extra lessons help? Will the lessons teacher teach those students for free? Know that? Or Kayla, or no, if you.
Oh, I don't necessarily think so because at the end of the day, that's still those lessons teachers making, some income, access or some income and stuff like that. Um, I don't think I know of any situations like this. And, maybe if a student can't afford lessons, there are other ways of getting this information, asking a teacher to help you at lunch or, talking to a friend or somebody in your class to get the same information. And they might even explain it better than your teacher or said lessons teachers that people pay for to go to help explain certain topics.
Yeah, I don't think that the most teachers would give lessons for free. I don't think that's the case. There are
Okay. Oh, now updates. Oh, there'll be no point on it. All right. It fully depends on the teacher. Because as Kayla said,
Uh,
they will. Oh, now but all right, you go ahead now.
Yeah, there are some student-teacher relationships where they can talk on the phone and probably get to understand the topic a little better. But if they don't have any access to that, I guess they can use the internet to do their own research. As Kayla said, probably ask a teacher personally during their lunchtime period or something like that.
Right. It totally depends on the teacher because that's a form of income. So if out of their heart they decide that they want to help the student, then it should be so. And it also goes back to the government how they set up the schooling system. Because thinking going back to the Scandinavian countries, in Finland, one thing that I researched, they didn't do that much, but one thing that I saw, and I saw in two different areas, is that they don't have set schools that are private or public. They take all the tax money and they allocate the funding to all the schools evenly. And that way, you wouldn't really have a need for lessons or paid lessons, I should say, because the schools are giving the money these parents are paying the taxes and it's going back to the schools and the students are using it. And I don't believe that lessons should come in there because they don't take lessons. What is another thing that I saw when I did my research. So here, if the government is able to do it and it's changed, then that question about not having the funds to send your child to lessons, it would come into play if the whole government setting change around schooling. All right, so your next question here is, right, in Trinidad here, there is the concept of prestige schools versus non-prestige schools. Do you think that the prestige school will have an advantage over the non-prestige school, and how so? And also, is the system the same in Barbados? Renell, Kayla, yeah.
Go ahead right now since it was first allocated to Trinidad.
Okay, so it's kind of like there's a stigma attached to, as I said before, the more prestigious schools versus the non-prestigious schools. The ones who pass for the good ones, and I guess one of the prestigious schools in my country is like St. Joseph Convent, Holy Name Convent, and those types. There's a proud feeling, and people sometimes say that when you pass for the non-prestigious schools, you have a lower chance of probably succeeding. And I guess that is not the way that they should go about it. Is how basically how you apply yourself to the work. There is a difference with both prestigious and non-prestigious schools, but at the same time, well, the teaching level is different. So that's why parents would more try to push their children to go into the prestigious schools. So
Yeah, in Barbados there is that same like stereotype also. The top schools, Harrison College, the St. Michael School, Queen's College. You go to those schools, and I think there is an advantage to going to those schools because when you go to those schools, I think like a lot of teachers are more like invested in the students, and there's a lot more put into those schools because there's I won't necessarily say a higher chance of success, but you see a lot more students from the same Harrison College and St. Michael School and Queen's College performing to a certain level. And yes, although not all students who attend these schools would be great and perform excellent, or not all students who go to like what would be referred to as like the lower schools, but you do see the difference though in the school when it comes to like the atmosphere and just the whole learning environment on the whole.
Yeah, I would definitely say there is an advantage. And I'm just going to touch base on the environment for one, because at most of the higher schools, when you just look at the bathrooms and the desks and the furniture in some of the classrooms, most of them, if not to the best standard, are mostly furnished. But when you go to as we will say, the lower schools, bathrooms don't even have doors on the stalls. So the environment is not really that conducive to learning. So I do believe there is an advantage to the quote unquote prestige schools here in Barbados.
Yeah, there's a comment in the chat saying that they do not agree that teachers are not more committed at Harrison College or Queen's College. It doesn't only have to do with the teachers, but like for me, for example, is if I see my friends or something, getting A's or getting a certain percent in this exam or stuff like that, is gonna push me to want to, be on par with them and wanting to perform to the same level. If I see other students in my class, it's like 50 not 50, sorry, like 80% of the class got A's, and then the other 20, I want to be in that 80%. So it doesn't necessarily only have to do with the teachers, but also the students and the whole environment.
I would say the students place at disadvantages in the not so prestigious schools because the mindset and the whole behavior, the whole environment is different. In the more prestigious schools, the students are a little more settled and focused, and vice versa. The not so prestigious schools, the children are more reckless, not paying attention in class and those type of things, and that could hamper their education, their learning when it comes to, as we mentioned before, completing the syllabus and those type of things. So that's why I personally think it's kind of a disadvantage. And some parents would look at putting their children in lessons just to help them to improve in certain areas because they know that the behavior of the students in the school here in Trinidad, I could relate and I saw personally, is different in both environments.
Chelsea, know that you're about. The question was, is there an advantage going to a prestige school over a non-prestige school? Then from there you could take back up.
You're muted, Tracy.
My apologies. I would say definitely. Kind of to go with what everybody said. When I did 11 plus, I passed for a not so prestigious school. And my mom went and she was like, no way. These kids had like, she said like jail. There was like wrought iron for the doors. And she said for some reason, they had a car on top of the roof. And it was just the culture. It was just not where she saw me. And based on her, saying how she was what she saw, and when I was transferred to uh I would say foundation is prestigious, but one of the higher schools, it was not the same. No, we get the same drawing on the walls and stuff like that, but we get our walls painted, and people say that at prestigious schools, students are a certain way. It's just they are, but they can be wild as well. It's just they know when to control it. At school, you don't get on rah 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 rah, but when they go out, they get on a certain way. So it's just I do think there is a disadvantage for some, but I feel as though if the students that were not as academically inclined that went to the lower schools had something that really piqued their interest, they would just be as well off as the students that go to prestigious schools. So, there needs to be a balance. But before I take over, y'all could just continue with the questions that were in the chat before because I can't see them anymore. If there were any more.
Okay, yeah, there was another one. The next question is basically, with all of this talking about trying to keep it level and even, the person is basically asking if there is any room for a bit of elitism. So, like, is there any room for us to have the top people? So of course, I will go on this and say yes, there is a room for it because everyone is not going to be at the same level. They would have the people that learn quicker or excel in something more than the other. In sports, we see it. They are the top athletes, and then there are the athletes that are in Division 3 or Division 2 and the Division 1. There are different places for each thing. So yes, there is a space for that elitism. It's just that for it to not be a competition to bring down the other people, but for them to see it as a way, okay, I want to get to that, I will strive for that, and not to just settle at where they're at or regress and see it and be like, oh, I can't ever get there, and just stop doing everything altogether. So it's just a mindset and something that will have to be taught in the system. Okay, if no one has anything on that, we can find the next question. Okay, so the chart is right. Does the education system act as a tool to further promote classism by further oppressing the majority of students from low socio-economic backgrounds?
To read that again.
Does the education system act as a tool to further promote classism by further oppressing the majority of students from low socio-economic backgrounds?
Okay.
Anyone have anything on that? Well, I will go and say yes, because the more money you have, the more well off you are, basically. Because as with Chelsea's case, if you don't have the money and you pass for this school, you're going to that school. That just it is. But if you do have the funding, and this is in life, we see it that people that have the most money could jump the line in life and get up wherever they want to. As same thing, like if you go to jail and you have the funding, you could pay your bill and you could be out until your trial comes. If you don't have the money, you are there. So the education system does act as a tool, because the more money you have, the better it is. The same thing with how Chelsea said at foundation they get their walls painted. Why do they get the wall painted? Because they have the funding for it. The lower schools don't have the funding for it. So when the walls are scratched up or painted on, it has to stay that way until someone comes in and pays for it to be redone.
But also, if you think about it, the kids at students at lower schools, they would see a clean wall and just go and mark it up just the same, you know. But for
Yeah,
us,
I think that's the mindset of any normal teenager, you know. It's like you're gonna go travel something at one point in your life.
but you would find is at certain like at Queen's College, you wouldn't see as much things on the walls at Queen's College as you would see in other schools. You know, it's just like we say, it's the class of people, and it's sad that you have to either go to a private school to get a to be in the space you need to be, or to have great academics to excel. It is puts us at a serious disadvantage. I don't know if Renelle has anything to add.
In some schools, like the one I used to go, it was considered a private school. They used to ask for a certain amount of fees every month or every term and say that they were going to do certain things with it, and we weren't really seeing those things happening. So yeah, I don't.
Okay, and another thing we have in the chat is that teachers, I'm just paraphrasing here, that teachers put their best foot forward no matter where they are. But there are some students that come from very poor backgrounds and their behavior is not conducive to that learning environment. And the teacher has to spend most of their time discipline the students instead of teaching. So as Kayla said, one person will misbehave, distracting another, and then everyone's distracted. And then instead of teaching, the teacher is trying to settle down the class. And it basically says, what do you think of this? So I
Yeah,
personally,
I think that's just gonna be a problem, you know, no matter where. And it's not necessarily, you know, there might be other things on the student's mind. So it's not necessarily, you know, oh, that teachers have the one or two bad behaved students in their classroom. You know, it might be things personal, or it might be things going on at home that are affecting or blocking them from learning. And again, although teaching the students would still be hard, I think like it's just to find other ways that may be engaging or might help students to kind of, you know, not find a reason to misbehave, I guess is the best way I can put it.
I agree. Every student has their own unique way of learning. Some students learn by reading and writing things over and over. Some students learn by watching videos and hearing actual audio. So I guess it's based on the teacher. The teacher needs to like kind of cipher through the students and see what's the best learning techniques, you know, for each student. And I guess they could separate them into certain classes so that it'll be easier for the teacher to teach this whatever that needs to be brought across in class. So like if a certain amount of students prefer the visual learning, they should have a class for that. And I guess that all comes down to funds and everything too. So
Yeah, that question actually leads into a question I had about if the school system, if there should be psychologists there. But when I thought of this question, I was thinking that teachers should also be trained, like some like have some kind of psychological skills, if I word that correctly. But also in schools, we should have guidance counselors. So when you have a problem like this, as opposed to the teacher dealing with it, especially if it's a problem that happens right there, go to the guidance counselor and have, because sometimes I wonder what's the guidance counselor there for, you know, have that child meet with the guidance counselor so the guidance counselor can figure out, okay, what is going on, what does this child need extra, liaise with the teacher, work with the teacher. And then, because it could be something very simple, or it could be a case where the child might have um, what's the word, a disability or some learning disorder. And I feel like that is the purpose of a guidance counselor, to help with the challenges that teachers might face with students in the classroom. I don't know if y'all have anything to add.
yeah,
Yeah,
instead of just punishing them or suspending the child for misbehaving in class, I agree with the guidance counselor.
right. I just want to go on this. No, we are not discrediting any teachers here. We do believe that teachers do their best, but just that when you look at the quote unquote lower schools, the same way that us students will come into school wanting to learn, but then because of a specific teacher, we don't like this subject, the teachers will come in and they are putting their best foot forward as well. But if all the students, sorry, are misbehaving all the time, the teachers might get frustrated after it being repeated, and the teacher might not want to teach anymore. The teacher might become frustrated, and that's basically what we were saying at the higher schools, prestige schools, that the students are normally more well mannered. And on what Chelsea said, the guidance counselor is very crucial, because speaking from past experience, my brother in primary school, he was failing terribly in English, and the teacher would just say, "Nope, that's it, he's done." But then he went to a guidance counselor, and he saw that he was dyslexic, and then from that they catered to him, and he started doing well. So I believe that guidance counselors should be in the schools, and not only one, especially for the size of certain schools. Because for Harrison College, I'm not sure the amount of students. I think Caleb can help me with it, but it's a lot of students, and we only have one guidance counselor. And I believe that the guidance counselors should not only be there for the students, but they should also have for the teachers as well. Because as much as the students go through, the teachers go through the same stuff, just flipped.
Yeah. Kayla, you have anything to add?
Not really. No, I agree with everything Dominic said. Yes, like I think it's like 1,100 students at our school, and there's only one guidance counselor. So yeah, I just agree with what's been said so far.
I agree, but there's something else about teachers. Teachers should be able to pick up disabilities, and depending on how bad the student is sometimes, because I am dyslexic, and my mom only knew that when I went to private school. My mom only was able to help me because my teachers there, realize, okay, for at this age she should be this and she's not, so let us go and get her tested. But why couldn't my teacher in public school tell me that? Why did she write me off and say, she will be nothing, And then when I was in secondary school, I like I told y'all, I don't like exams. But my teacher, I was doing maths, and he was like, Chelsea, what's wrong? You're doing well in class. Why are you not getting through these exams? And we just had a normal discussion. And he was like, relax, just forget about the pressure, forget it's an exam, and from there, I've never had a problem with maths. So it's just is about teachers taking the time, and I understand it could be very hard, but some do it. Some realize, this person is doing well, this person is not, and just take that little time to just help your students. But that's
I
just
think
my
the
opinion.
only way that the teacher would be able to recognize the students that probably have disabilities or anything along that line is if the teaching is more so on a personal level.
But
Whereas if it's like a big class, they mightn't be able to really notice, I guess.
I don't think I agree, because teachers mark students. You are marking a student, you're seeing that the student is continuously, it first is a case if are you looking for a trend, first of all. But if you're marking everybody the same way and you realize this student all the time is just not getting through, I mean, no matter the size of the class, you have to mark all of the homework or whatever. So you have to pick up on, on these things. That's just my opinion.
Right, I agree with you fully, Chelsea, because there's when we look at it, there are a lot of young teachers currently entering the schooling systems here in Barbados for sure. And I'm not saying that a young teacher is not well versed, but I believe that they should be more going into it and not just learning or mastering what you are going to teach, but learning, teaching overall. Like someone asked in the chat if teachers should be trained or teach different methodologies for teaching to make all learning universally accessible. No, to do all, that might be a stretch, but I do believe that teachers should not only learn to say, yes, I got my degree in math, so I'm going to teach math. I believe that there should be more to it, because when I look at nursery teachers who have to teach many things, they go through a certain syllabus that makes sure that they can detect certain things in students, that they can look at a student and interact with them, look from their, as Chelsea said, their trends from the work that they're doing, and pick up certain things that they see in dyslexia, any disabilities. So I do believe that teachers should be taught before they are allowed into the teaching program at a school or university, that not only that they have their master's or their degree in this subject, but they also have a general knowledge of how to teach and how to pick up on certain things.
Right, I agree. I see in the chat someone was agreeing with Pastor Henry, and she says, so that students who is so that student who is generally gifted but only underperformed on the day of the common entrance exam, perhaps because of nerves, are marked and regarded as having passed or less for a less established school. Does this play on their self-esteem? And just to add another question so we could at least take up a few. Another question says the expectations for students at Ivy Leagues are very different for students at non-Ivy League schools.
I think just looking at it from a perspective, I'll use BSAC for example. That is the secondary school track meet, like inter school. So when it's coming to that time, all the schools come up with a different chants and stuff. And even schools that are considered to be lower schools or schools that are considered to be higher school, whether it be in sports or just on subjects specifically, I think that at least here in Barbados, a lot, might not be all, but the majority of people tend to still be proud of the school they go to, like no matter like the ranking or the stereotype that the school is given. I find that a lot of people are still proud, to say I went to XYZ school.
Yeah.
Definitely. You see this a lot. And a thing about it too is that when you look at it like that, some of the private schools here, when you in Barbados, when you look at the same BISA, they don't come out in the numbers that the other schools come out in. They don't do as well as the other schools. So
But why?
yeah,
But why though? Because they are introduced to so many other things, it's not as much of them that would participate in BSAT because they're just everywhere, right?
Right, so that's the thing. Some of these public schools, that's where the students get their release. That's where they excel at. So that's basically all it is. They're having the opportunity. So I guess in the private, that might be a plus, that they got the opportunity to do much more. But at the public, most of the main thing you see is football, cricket, or running.
Yeah, it's true. So since we are crunching down on time, I will address the questions in the chat, but more so just address them to one panelist, just so because we have a lot of messages. Y'all can read through as well. So according to Barbados Minister of, actually this is a question I wanted to address at the end, to wrap up, so I'm gonna just write that down and address it at the end. Should all teachers be taught? Okay, I think we went through this. Excellent point, Dominic. For now. Okay, do you think that many students go to school deliberately not wanting to learn? Or is it that many students have learning disabilities or other factors, social culture, domestic problems, or that negate, learning? Do you think that students really want to fail in school? Let me answer. I do not want to fail. At this point, failing is not an option for me. Like failing just makes me feel defeated. It is not like I want to excel. I want to get through. Like failing is not something we want. I think it just happens because of lack of encouragement, lack of motivation. Because like for us right now, university, I feel because we're online, they have packed us with assessments. When I say I have about 11 assessments between today and next week, Drew, they've done the most. And students are not motivated. They don't care about failing now. Failing is okay. I'll do it next year, and that's not how it should be. So the lack of motivation that students have is why they fail. We don't want to fail, but it's circumstances.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just that just happy because I honestly don't believe anyone wants to fail. Like we all want to succeed in life,
Yeah.
but it's just that want to succeed will not be enough to overpower the circumstances that you feel. So I believe it's more that it's an acceptance that you are going to feel rather than wanting to feel.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say, because like some students might look at it and say, well, my older brother, he was failing in school and dropped out and just got a job. Or it might be, they're influenced by other things that might just take their mind off of studying and wanting to excel and perform in certain areas.
All right, Renelle.
I agree. Nobody wants to fail. It's just, as Chelsea said, certain circumstances and motivation is important, self motivation as well as motivation from probably parents, friends, anybody. And also, it comes down to the discipline of the student itself when it comes to doing their work. I think that plays a big part in it, knowing that you have certain things to get done and you have certain time to do it. So, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And although also I'd like to add that, there are still those same students at every school, no matter, might have some of the smartest people that go to the top schools in the island and that people I expect to do so well and to become this politician and this scientist and stuff like that. And these same students underperform and drop out or fail a bunch of subjects just as much as students who are seen to go to lower schools that may do the same dropping out or failing. And then the reverse side is that there's students that quote unquote go to these lower schools that push themselves and perform 10 times better than students that go to these same top or quote unquote prestigious schools.
I completely agree. I am in class right now with students that are on scholarship, students that have lost their scholarship, students that have failed, that fear their GPA because of scholarship. And I don't have a scholarship, but the pressure that I feel is the same that they feel. But they think, or people say, okay, you have a scholarship, you must excel and you will be good. You won't go to university and you won't fail anything. And then they fail courses that keep them back. And because they've been built up, I am just this and nothing can faze me. It hits them in the self-esteem because you are not untouchable, So, and then these prestigious things, there are people that went Queens and Harrison College and St. Michael's that pump gas. So it's not a case to say if you go to low school, you will be nothing. It's not a case to say if you go to a prestigious school, you will be something. I don't want to tell business, but I have family members that went to low schools that are in managerial positions and that work with people that went to Harrison College and Queens College that are on, low income. And it is to say, and they flaunt it. I went Queens College, I went Harrison College, but, we associate those schools with lawyer and doctor. but that's not what they are. So school, they say if you don't go to this school, you're going to be this and that and whatever, whatever. No, it doesn't, it is you, what you do
Correct.
when you get there and what you do after you leave.
Correct. You have to apply yourself.
Our next question. That was good feeling. Some classes are too big and some teachers tend to miss certain aspects because they focus on getting through the syllabus. So we discussed this. The syllabus is loaded. Maybe it might be too much. Maybe the amount of years we're in school is too little, but the syllabus is something we discussed. I was about to ask the same question as Seneca, sorry, because the previous question made it sound like lower school students are just delinquents, and no. Okay, so that's not what we mean. I feel like lower school students are at disadvantage because they say lower school you're not academically inclined, but there's nothing there for them to excel at. Just because you're not academically inclined doesn't mean that you are nothing. There's just no provision has been made for them to excel.
Exactly. And the more delinquent I see it, it will be more at the higher schools when they have the opportunity, they have everything there, but they just let it go by and decide not to do anything. I see that as more of a delinquent. And even if you would say, okay, they don't have the but smarts, but they could run fast. But then when you look at the fields that they have, it's riddled with potholes, it's full of rocks, it's not even a full field. So is exactly what Chelsea said. They just do not have the um pros. They don't have the produce there. They don't have everything that the top schools would have, so that they can excel. Excel, sorry.
Yeah. Right now.
Monsieur said, okay.
No, well, I basically don't have anything to add. I just agree with what Dominic said.
Okay. It seems like Kayla has lost us. So since we are running out of time, I'm going to go to my last question. And I hope Kayla joins back before we finish, but just so we get the last question out of the way, my question, which kind of coincides with Pastor Henry, is if you were the Minister of Education right now, what would you change? What would you do to have the educational system how you think it should be? You are minister.
One thing that I already was going to base on was changing the way that the common entrance is set up. I believe yes, it will still have the math and English. I don't repeat myself, but just basically that the testing that's not just based on one set criteria, but that the teachers go with the students and go with them and decide what will be best for them. Because yes, in primary school, when you're going from class 3 to class 4 in Barbados, I'm not sure in Trinidad, but this is right before you go to do the combination exam, the two classes. They try to give you the same teacher for those two classes. But I just believe that once the teacher stays with you more, that you will be a better learner. And another thing I would like to implement if I was there was to make the classes more fun, one. And with that, I just mean make it more entertaining and not just come in the class, you do this, sit down, do that. Make it more visually appealing. Because that's one thing that attracts children. It attracts everyone basically. And another thing, short, because in based on the Finland way what they do, they have longer class periods. Because for us, we have 45-minute periods at Harrison College, but with these longer periods, they also have longer break times. So it's not to say that they're doing a lot more work. It's actually that they're doing less technically school work than us, but yeah, so they are excelling. And they start their classes going to school from the age of 7. No, I'm not saying that that would be best, but well, they start at 7. There are still some things that they will be taught at home before they go into the schooling system there. Because they set up that they have 9 mandatory years in school. So they start at 7, and by the age of 16, I believe it was, that then they will decide what it is they'll do. So one thing that I would change, some of the things I would change is that I would let the combinations be more of not just a set criteria, but more that the teachers go with the students and depict exactly what it is they want to do instead of just math, English, that's what it is, and that's what it would change.
Okay, so one thing that I would change, as I mentioned before, is I would try to come up with a system that allows all students, not just private students, to have more opportunities available to them in school, not just outside of school, in school, so that they can, have a better understanding of where they would want to be when it's time for them to branch off into the world of work. And another thing is, as we discussed before, in the classroom, pinpointing the different learning techniques that each child may prefer. So, as I said before, it may need some funds, but I believe that the classrooms where the children prefer the visual learning, and it should be separated from those who prefer more of the writing and reading and those type of things. So that is two things that I would change if I was the Minister of Education. You're muted, Chelsea.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, I would go along the same lines, trying to get a balance between private and public. But like they say, money is the root of all evil, and to get the to get the educational system where we would want it for public schools, it will cost money because like I said, just because somebody is academically inclined doesn't mean that they would not want to try a skill. So to say that I would go and implement skill schools for the less academically inclined wouldn't be fair if I'm trying to have a balanced system. So it's a case where we have to find a balance, maneuvering around the government basically, because that's where our money comes from, to figure out how we can allocate money here, but still not put someone else at a disadvantage. Because we saw with like when they increased bus fare, people complain, but we go to school for years free, and clearly based on our education system, there is not enough money to get where we think we should be. I go university free in Trinidad. People don't know that. They think it's only Cave Hill, but the government pays for me to go to Trinidad, and it is an advantage to me. But there are people out there that waste the money. People that get kicked out, people that switch majors. So it has to really be a crackdown and put a criteria in place so that the money that they do allocate to education is not, wasted basically.
Right.
So it's more about a balance, a really, really serious balance. But that's my opinion. Unfortunately, Kayla, might
Do
not
you
be able
think
to
if sometime in the future, the public schools are open to more opportunities, do you think that the whole term of private school and public school would be abolished and it would just be school?
I don't.
Because a person can go through the whole education system, doing all the subjects and so on, and then realize they want to be a dancer, and then I don't know. So
See, if there is a balance, then that student would have been introduced to dancing. Say the student was a public dancing in the early years and could be so amazing by the time ready to leave school because he or she was introduced to that as a young child, And like you said, I honestly I don't think that if the system is balanced, people will private school will be abolished because there are people that say, "Oh, my child must go private school." There are people like that. So, but the people that like me that went to get help, to get somebody that cared, to be pushed, might not have to do that. So,
and even if they choose to do dancing or football or focus on one of those things, they would still have to do the SCA, the CXC, and those things because that's how the system is set up.
But it might be easier because they have a balance, They say, okay, I have to do this English because when I become this top dancer, I must be able to articulate myself. When I do a choreography, I have to be able to explain what I want people to do. So I feel that if they had that incentive to learn, it would be, which is what people get in private school, you know, they don't get work jammed down the throat all the time. So our
agree.
time is kind of up, but I see some questions. All right, so actually our time is up. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming and hearing us talk today. We really appreciate the comments and the questions. Unfortunately, we didn't get to answer all, but they are duly noted. And I would like to hand over to Pastor Henry. Thank you again.
Dr. Sutherland.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I just want to say thank you to Raynell, to Chelsea, to Dominic, and to Kayla, and to Javon, who helps in the preparation session but wasn't able to join us tonight. We need to provide spaces for our young people to air their views and to challenge them in some of their thinking. And I think you guys did a fantastic job tonight of representing what your beliefs were and even accepting some of the challenges that came your way to say, perhaps we didn't think about it this way. I love the fact that you guys talked about your research in looking at other education systems. And it's just always a pleasure to hear you guys. I think perhaps we need an education system part 2 to address some of the questions that were in the chat. But I just hope everybody appreciates that our young people do have a point of view and we have to nurture it so that we continue building Shatterproof families. I just want to encourage you all to join us again next week for our adult program, where we discuss the role of the church. The role of the church in families. Our topic this year is building shatterproof families, one brick at a time. And so we want to discuss the role of the church in family life. So we look forward to seeing you next week. Same place, same time. Again, thank you to our youth. We really appreciate you being open and honest. And we look forward to hearing you guys next month.